By the way, thank you so much for sending us $1,000 every month. It was supposed to be a simple expression of gratitude during a phone conversation. For the past few months, my son and his wife have been depositing money into our account for my husband John and me. But I felt it was time they started spending the money on themselves instead. That was what I intended to say, but my daughter-in-law, Kate, reacted unexpectedly.
I don't think we've been sending any money.
To my surprise, Kate seemed genuinely confused, as if she was hearing about this for the first time. What? Now it was my turn to be shocked, echoing her uncertainty.
We only sent money once, when John was in the hospital, and we haven't sent anything since.
But that can't be. The money has been coming in from the account you both use.
My husband hasn't mentioned anything like that.
A heavy silence fell between us. I had assumed that the remittances from my son were something he had discussed with Kate. After all, they are a married couple, and it only makes sense that they would have agreed on the amount they were sending us to support our daily needs. So, if neither Kate nor I knew about this ongoing support, what could it possibly mean? Then, a week later.
No way! This can't be!
When we discovered the truth behind the money, our faces contorted in fear. My name is Beth. I'm a stay-at-home wife who has finished raising my son and now spends my days leisurely. Since my son got married and moved out, I've been living with my much older husband, John, relying on his pension. I want to contribute to our household finances, so I've been trying my hand at being a handmade craft artist, but the income one earns is barely a drop in the bucket. Welcome home, John.
I'm home.
John replied. In the evenings, John, who works a few times a week as a senior worker at the local office after his retirement, comes home. When I greeted him while preparing dinner, I noticed he was carrying large packages in both hands, apparently bringing in the mail.
It's a gift from Kevin. You went to Boston this time.
John said. When I opened the package placed on the table, I found beans from a famous, long-established shop in Boston inside. There was also a family photo of my son Kevin, his wife Kate, and their middle school daughter Brianna, which made me smile warmly. Kevin and Kate love to travel, and every time there's a long weekend, they go somewhere new and send us souvenirs like this. They also visit us frequently, and being able to see the three of them and hear about their trips has become one of my pleasures. I'd love to visit Boston someday, I said. Since marrying John, I've never worked outside the home. But because of that, I sometimes realize how narrow my world is and feel a bit naive. Unlike Kevin, I've never traveled far on my own. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I can't help feeling that I might be missing out on something. One day, in the midst of our peaceful days, I suddenly received a phone call from the local office. I wondered what it could be, and to my shock, I was told that John had fallen down the stairs and had been taken to the hospital. I rushed to the hospital where he had been transported. Fortunately, his life was not in danger, but he had broken his leg, so he would have to stay in the hospital for a while. When I informed Kevin, he made time in between his work to come right away. Kevin said,
"Long time no see, Dad and Mom. I heard you tried to impress a young girl by carrying something heavy, and ended up falling, didn't you?"
John replied.
I'm really embarrassed.
When I heard how John had fallen down the stairs, I couldn't help but sigh, just like Kevin, who was also shaking his head in exasperation. At his age, I wish he would understand the limitations of his body better. Kevin continued.
By the way, it must be tough to cover the medical expenses with just Dad's pension, right? I've arranged for some money on our end, so please use it for the treatment costs.
There's no need to go that far. We have enough savings for that, and I'd rather you use that money for yourself, Kate, and Brianna. I said, surprised by his sudden offer and shaking my head. We live a modest life, so even with the hospitalization, we're not in a situation where we're struggling financially. John also nodded in agreement, though he looked a bit troubled. However, Kevin was adamant.
Don't worry about it. This is my way of showing filial piety.
Hearing the word filial piety made me feel weak. The fact that my son, even after starting his own family, still cares about us so much filled me with more joy than a sense of guilt. I didn't want to waste Kevin's thoughtful gesture. Thank you. If you insist that much. In the end, we gratefully accepted Kevin's offer. After that, a significant amount of money was deposited into our account from Kevin. However, I decided not to use it and to save it for Brianna, who would likely need it in the future. But then... That's strange. There's another deposit. A few months later, when I went to the bank to withdraw some money, I noticed that Kevin had made another deposit. And it wasn't just a one-time thing. For the past few months, a fixed amount had been deposited into the account every month. Puzzled, I decided to contact Kevin again. When I spoke to him on the phone, he responded casually. Kevin said,
Well, you know, rehab and doctor visits cost money, right? It's part of the treatment costs. Please don't hesitate to use it.
No, really, it's okay. The money you gave us before has already been a big help. You should use it for your own family. Kevin replied,
But Dad and Mom are my family too. Besides, this is my personal money, so don't worry about it. Oh, but I'd appreciate it if you didn't mention it to Kate. She'd only worry.
No matter how many times I tried to decline, Kevin insisted that we accept the money. While I appreciated Kevin's thoughtfulness, I felt uneasy about receiving more money when we didn't really need it. I had heard that Kevin was an elite employee at a well-known company, earning a substantial salary, but even so, I wished he would save that money for a rainy day. So, I decided to discuss it with John again. I brought up the topic with him as he sat in the living room, leisurely enjoying his coffee after being discharged from the hospital. I'm grateful for Kevin's kindness, but maybe it's time to stop accepting the money, I said. I didn't want to disregard Kevin's feelings. When I explained this, John nodded in agreement. John said,
You're right. Now that I can walk again.
Although John couldn't run or lift heavy objects after being discharged a few months ago, he had recovered enough to manage daily life without any problems. Neither of us had any chronic illnesses, and aside from regular checkups, we didn't need to visit the hospital. Exactly. And my jewelry sales have been doing well too. I think it's time we firmly refuse the remittances, I added. John agreed.
Yes, let's do that.
After discussing it, we decided to turn down Kevin's remittances. Not only did I talk to Kevin, but John also assured him that we were doing fine. Though Kevin was a bit reluctant, he eventually understood. When Kevin kindly said,
Let me know if you ever need anything.
It warmed my heart. However, the following month, I noticed that another remittance had been sent. This time, it was not to the account we usually use, but to the account that my husband and I had set up for savings. Oh, he's still sending money. Even though I've told him repeatedly that it's not necessary. The sender was, of course, Kevin, and I couldn't help but be exasperated by his stubbornness. But then, a sense of unease crept into my mind. This savings account is primarily managed by John. Moreover, the remittance from Kevin was $1,000 each month, a significant amount that had been deposited regularly since John's hospitalization. That's strange. John never mentioned anything about this. If Kevin wanted to send money, wouldn't it make more sense to deposit it into our usual account, which directly affects our day-to-day living expenses? It almost seemed as if something was being hidden in this account that I rarely checked. Surely not. I dismissed the possibility that crossed my mind, thinking it couldn't be true, but the fact remained that John hadn't mentioned these deposits to me for such a long time. The more I thought about it, the more I couldn't shake off my concern. That weekend, unable to shake off my unease, I decided to secretly call Kate. I used the excuse of asking about Brianna, who had been so busy with her extracurricular activities lately that we hadn't seen much of her. Kate said,
Brianna is doing great, though she's been keeping us on our toes. Just yesterday, she got so excited that she slipped in a puddle and came home soaked.
That sounds like a handful. But I'm glad she's doing well, I replied, chuckling at the adorable stories Kate shared. Then, I casually brought up the matter that had been bothering me. By the way, Kate, thank you so much for sending us $1,000 every month.
What?
Kate responded, sounding confused. To my surprise, I could hear the bewilderment in Kate's voice.
I don't think we've been sending any money,
she said. What? Now it was my turn to be taken aback, echoing her confusion. Kate continued, her voice hesitant.
We only sent money once, when John was in the hospital, and we haven't sent anything since then.
But the money has been coming in, from the account you and Kevin use.
Kevin hasn't mentioned anything about that.
Kate's voice grew tense, and a heavy silence fell between us. I had assumed that the remittances from Kevin were something he and Kate had discussed. After all, as a married couple, it would be natural for them to agree on how much to send us. Sensing the unease in Kate's voice, I heard her say more firmly,
I'll ask Kevin about it.
Yes, I'll talk to John as well, I replied. Since it was an account that John managed, there was no way he could be unaware of this. With a growing sense of unease, I resolved to ask him directly once he came back home. However, when I asked John about the remittances to the account, he simply tilted his head in confusion.
Remittances? What are you talking about?
John asked. But there have been monthly deposits into our savings account. Could it be that Kevin mentioned something to you? If so, I'd like you to share these things with me, I said. John insisted he didn't know anything about it, which didn't make sense to me, considering he should be aware if part of his salary was being transferred. Even when I pressed him, asking him to tell me the truth, John kept insisting that he knew nothing.
I'm telling you, I don't know anything about this. Besides, we hardly ever use that account,
John said, growing agitated. That's true, but I began. Frustrated, John stood up abruptly and left the room, his footsteps heavy with irritation. In the end, I was left with no new information, and my questions remained unanswered. A few days later, I received a message from Kate suggesting that we meet in person. She didn't mention the reason, but it was probably about the remittances. Thinking so, I chose a day when John wouldn't be home, and we agreed to meet at a nearby cafe. When Kate arrived at the cafe alone, she had a troubled expression on her face. After I told her that I had gotten nowhere when I asked John, her expression darkened even more. And what about on your end? Kate? I asked.
Kevin said he hasn't been sending any money either.
Kate replied. The outcome, which I had somewhat anticipated, left me silent and unable to speak. A growing suspicion began to form. Could they really be doing something behind our backs?
But it seems that there have indeed been transfers from the account Kevin often uses.
Kate added. Yes, I secretly brought the bank statement with me, and it clearly shows a $1,000 deposit every month. I said. I pulled out the bank statement from our savings account that I had taken from the drawer at home. Kate also showed me a photo of Kevin's bank statement, and sure enough, the transfer records were there. Kate said,
Does this mean that Kevin and John are doing something behind our backs?
I'd like to believe that's not the case. I replied. It was strange that they both firmly denied any involvement despite the clear evidence of the money transfers. Even if there was some innocent personal exchange between them, why wouldn't they tell us about it? Come to think of it, John often exchanges emails with Kevin on the computer. I suddenly recalled as we were both lost in thought. I don't want to snoop or doubt John, but maybe I should take a look, I suggested hesitantly. Kate responded.
Yes, I'm curious too. John is at work today, right? May I join you?
Of course. I'd appreciate your help, I replied. Kate, who seemed just as concerned, nodded seriously, indicating that she was just as eager to get to the bottom of this. And so, we hurried back to the house, determined to check John's computer before he returned. This was the first time I had ever done something like this since John and I got married. Even as a married couple, we had always respected each other's boundaries, knowing that everyone has areas they don't want others to intrude on. As I moved to turn on the computer, my hands started to tremble. Noticing this, Kate gently rubbed my back, trying to reassure me.
I'm sure it's nothing. Maybe they've just been secretly saving up for a surprise overseas trip for us or something like that.
Kate said. Yes, and if that's the case, we'll just pretend we never saw anything, I replied. Kate's comforting words helped ease my nerves a bit. She was right. My anxiety was making me think the worst, but perhaps they were simply planning something nice for us. With that in mind, I opened the email inbox. But our faint hopes were quickly dashed in the next moment. Oh, what's this attachment in the email? The emails between John and Kevin were mostly ordinary updates, nothing suspicious. However, at the end of one email, there was a short line that read the usual, followed by several attached files. When we opened the files, we both gasped.
What?
Kate exclaimed loudly. And no wonder. The files contained what appeared to be covertly taken photos of Kate and Brianna.
Is this me? And Brianna too?
Kate stammered, her voice trembling with shock. I was equally stunned, unable to find words. The photos were taken from angles that suggested they were shot secretly inside their home. Some showed Kate partially undressed, as if captured while changing, and others were of her right after a bath. There were also pictures of Brianna in her school uniform.
No, this can't be happening. What is going on?
Kate cried out. Wait. Could it be that this folder? I said, recalling an oddly placed photos folder on the home screen. With trembling hands, I clicked on it. As I waited for the photos to load, feeling as though I could barely breathe, What appeared on the screen were numerous covert photos of Kate and Brianna. Kate let out a small gasp.
Aw,
Judging by the sheer number of photos, this wasn't something that had started recently. It dated back to around the time those mysterious $1,000 remittances began.
no. Could Kevin and John really be behind this?
Kate said, her voice faltering as she collapsed into a chair, her strength drained. I, too, struggled to process the shock, feeling deeply betrayed. As I gently rubbed Kate's trembling back, I spoke with newfound resolve. Kate, I know this is painful, but we can't just let this go. We need to come up with a plan.
Yes. We have to do this, for Brianna's sake.
Kate replied, bravely forcing a smile through her tears. 1 month later, it was John's birthday party. When I invited Kevin and Kate, saying I wanted to throw a birthday party for John, they gladly agreed to come over. We decided to hold the party on the weekend instead of on John's actual birthday so that everyone could be there.
Happy birthday, Dad.
Kevin said.
Thank you.
John replied. Both Kevin and Kate brought gifts, and John seemed genuinely happy.
It's a shame that Brianna couldn't make it because of her club retreat.
John said. Yes, but it's understandable. She's working hard, I replied. Although Kevin and Kate came, Brianna was too busy with her club activities to attend. However, she had sent a gift with Kevin, which included a letter and a mug. Once everyone was comfortable and the mood was light, Kate clapped her hands to shift the atmosphere.
Actually, Mom and I have prepared a very special gift, haven't we?
Kate said. Yes, something truly special, I added, exchanging a meaningful glance with Kate.
That sounds great. I can't wait.
John said, his eyes lighting up with anticipation. As John looked on eagerly, Kate handed him a large basket. The contents were hidden under a checkered cloth.
Please, open it.
Kate urged.
I wonder what it is.
John said as he excitedly pulled back the cloth. But as soon as he saw what was inside, his face turned pale.
What's wrong, Dad?
Kevin asked, noticing John's sudden silence. He looked into the basket himself, and soon, sweat began to drip down his face. Yes, the basket was filled with the covert photos exchanged between Kevin and John. Now, both of you, what exactly is the meaning of this? I asked, standing firm as I confronted them. John's head snapped up as if startled, his face now flushed with anger.
You went through my computer without permission.
John shouted.
Kate! We promised each other when we got married that we'd never look through each other's things.
Kevin added, sounding betrayed. I felt like screaming back at them. After all, it was us who felt utterly betrayed, as if everything we had built had been destroyed. How dare you say that? Do you not understand the gravity of what you've done? This is a serious crime. I shouted.
And it's not just me. Brianna too. I never imagined you'd do something like this. Kevin!
Kate added, raising her voice. Together, Kate and I handed each of them an envelope that we had placed in the basket. John. I can't stay with someone who could do such a thing to his own daughter-in-law and granddaughter. I want a divorce, I declared.
Kevin, I want a divorce too.
Kate said.
What?
The two men were momentarily stunned, unable to comprehend what had just been said, but they quickly turned red with anger and began shouting back.
What are you talking about?
John yelled.
That's right. Kate! How could you say something like this all of a sudden?
Kevin protested. If I could avoid saying this, I would. I had believed I would stay with John until the day we died. But I couldn't stay with someone who had done such terrible things.
This isn't all.
Kate continued in a cold voice, pulling out more photos from her bag.
It's not just me and Brianna. There's evidence of even more.
She said. These included photos of women from John's workplace, the nearby sports gym, and the attached pool facility. We had found these while further investigating John's folders. These photos had also been exchanged in emails between John and Kevin.
Kate! You!
Kevin shouted, unable to contain his anger as he glared at Kate. But Kate glared back with equal intensity. There was now an irreparable rift between them, just as there was between John and me. You both need to turn yourselves into the police. If you don't, we'll contact them ourselves, I said calmly but firmly after saying everything I needed to say.
Wait, no! Kate, Mom! It wasn't me. This was all Dad's idea.
Kevin cried out, panicking.
Kevin! Are you betraying me? You're the one who asked for the photos.
John shouted back.
You didn't have to bring that up now.
Kevin retorted. With the truth now out in the open, John and Kevin began a nasty argument, revealing their true colors. As I listened to their argument, it became clear that this all started with John taking photos at the local office where he worked. Kevin happened to see the photos and, initially viewing them as a joke, gradually became deeply involved. Eventually, he started requesting more photos from John, offering money in return. Their exchange of photos escalated, with Kevin taking secret pictures of Kate and Brianna, while John, even during his hospitalization, was secretly photographing nurses and rehabilitation staff. It was purely by chance that I discovered their financial transactions.
Kate, please, give me one more chance. I swear I'll never do anything like this again.
Kevin cried out, almost in a plea, clinging to Kate. But Kate rejected him with a voice as cold as ice.
That's impossible. Even once, you sold out me and our daughter. How could I ever want to stay with someone like that?
John, the same goes for you, I added. The thought that my husband and son could do something like this is still hard for me to believe. The reason I turned this birthday, one we had celebrated together so many times, into a day of confrontation was because I felt it was necessary to face this harsh reality. After that, we contacted the police about Kevin and John, and we ended up getting divorced. Once the police were involved, their employers found out about their actions, and they were both, unsurprisingly, fired. Having lost their spouses, they now live in hardship, burdened with paying alimony and facing the harsh judgment of those around them. But that's no longer our concern.
Beth, it's been a while.
Kate greeted me. Yes, it has. It's good to see you, Kate. And you too, Brianna. A few months have passed since the incident, and I still keep in touch with Kate and Brianna, who moved back to their hometown. Although the details of the incident were kept vague, Brianna was visibly upset when she learned that her father and grandfather had been arrested. However, seeing her smile brightly and greet me with,
It's been a while, Grandma,
I felt a sense of relief. For Brianna's well-being, I can only hope that the memory of those two fades quickly.
I was really surprised to hear that you're living here all by yourself.
Kate remarked. Yes, I'm surprised myself, I replied. After divorcing John, I decided to leave the countryside and use the money I had saved to start a new life. I know it's late to be learning more about the world, but I wanted to finally overcome my naivety. Actually, my handmade shop is going to have a pop-up store at a department store in this area. So I thought I'd move closer, I explained.
Oh, that's wonderful. You've always said you wanted more people to see your work.
Kate recalled. You remembered. After the divorce, I officially opened my handmade shop, and it has been surprisingly successful. What started as a hobby turned out to be a worthwhile endeavor, as my years of experience and dedication have paid off, making my accessories popular. If you'd like, Brianna, you should come by. The shop's hours are still limited, but I can give you a little discount, I offered.
Really? I love Grandma's accessories. They're so cute. I'll show them off to my friends.
Brianna exclaimed excitedly. Seeing Brianna so enthusiastic made me smile as well. Even though I no longer have the partner I spent so many years with, I still have time ahead of me. There will likely be many challenges for someone as inexperienced as me, but the excitement of discovering a broader world fills me with hope. How did you enjoy this story? Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you in the next video.